Welcome to the Week 12 LA City Section football video. Connor Morissette and Alex Scar. Alex, for everyone besides the teams in the Open Division, playoffs have begun, and we are going to get to Division 1, 2, and 3, and then pick a whole bunch of games, but playoffs have arrived. How are you feeling?
Oh man, so excited. Division 1, there were a couple of good games, a couple of surprises, a bunch of stuff we're going to get to a little bit later. Open Division looming here this Friday, some great games in Division 2, Division 3, and this is what we've been waiting for all season long, some of the best teams playing their best football, ton of fun.
Yeah, and let's start in Division 1. We'll get to the Crenshaw game you were at in a little bit. They blanked Cleveland, but first, it was all pretty much chalk except for Southgate. Southgate goes to El Camino Real and gets a win. There was a bit of a discrepancy on the score. Was it 19-13? Was it 22-13? That's what Eric Sontheimer said. Max Preps had the 19-13 scoreline. But all I know is Lucio Rodriguez, he blocked the game-tying field goal attempt from Elko, and then Bronco Mente Bucio scooped it up and scored. That's according to Eric Sontheimer's tweet. So Southgate pulls the upset, and that was really the only game we kind of predicted that could have gone either way, and good for the Rams.
Yeah, and then we're going to get to the Westchester game in a little bit, where Southgate would have them in the second round, and things are kind of changing here for the Rams. Suddenly, it looks like they have a decent road out to try to make some noise here in this Division 1 playoff. So heads up to the Rams. I mean, we really didn't pick them. We picked El Camino Real. We got a couple of DMs on Twitter. Never count out Southgate. I mean, yeah, we can't. They beat a decent El Camino Real team. They certainly didn't lie down when we picked against them, so shout out to the Rams.
And in the other games, San Pedro, Reseda,
Blowouts.
all the teams we expected, Fairfax, they all kind of blow out these teams. And then you were at Crenshaw. What was the environment like over there? I know there were too many people at that game, even though they shut out Cleveland.
Yeah, so Eric Sontheimer, our buddy, said it was an SAT morning on Saturday morning after this Friday game. So we're going to give him a pass. But if I'm being honest, it was pretty dead. I rolled up. There was nobody there. Nobody in the stands. No one in the parking lot. I wasn't sure if I was at the right place. It was really, really quiet. But quickly, Crenshaw came out. A couple of pick sixes. They really kind of scored really early. They ended up winning that one 29-0. James Jenkins had 3 total touchdowns, a couple of touchdown receptions from quarterback Devontae Halsey. As I mentioned, he also returned a pick to the house. So real quickly, they got on Cleveland. They blanked him. Cleveland really wasn't in this game pretty quickly on. And then, yeah, I mean, the environment wasn't exactly what you expected. But this week, they've got Dorsey at Jackie Robinson Stadium. That's going to be so much fun, and that is going to be packed.
We mentioned Southgate. They will meet Westchester. And Alex, Westchester is probably the story from Division 1.
Oh, yeah.
After this week.
In a bad way.
In a bad way. 26 players for Westchester have been suspended after they got in an altercation in their game against Jefferson. Westchester won the game, but they're going to be with only 14 players against Southgate. They're going to call up some JV guys. It's pretty much like a scrimmage for Southgate, and this is the playoffs. You hate to see that.
Yeah.
One Westchester player told me it was a learning experience. We got to start learning from other people's experiences.
Exactly.
Because we saw Carson and Narbonne the same thing happened. You can't leave the sideline. And I thought your tweet summed it up perfectly. Don't leave the sideline. If you have to defend your boy, know the consequences.
Yeah, exactly. The city is very, very clear about it. If there is a fight on the field and you leave your team sideline, you are subject to suspension. So 26 Westchester players getting the boot here for the week. And if Jefferson had won, I'm sure they would have had players suspended too, but because their season is over, that point is moot. But as you mentioned, the Narbonne-Carson game, you should have learned from that. That was a huge, huge rivalry last week. You saw that there was fights. You saw suspensions were coming down. Guys, if someone is trying to get in your face, they're trying to get a rise out of you, just don't engage. If someone pops you in the mouth, they're going to get flagged. A referee is going to catch that. The ones they almost always flag is the retaliation. They see who did something afterwards. So if they're trying to get a rise out of you, rile you up, let them try to just rattle your cage. Don't let it get to you. And as I mentioned in my tweet, if you got to go defend it, just know that you're probably going to get popped for it, and Westchester, unfortunately, paying that consequence.
So there's the big update from Division 1. Alex, are there any other players in that bracket that you want to shout out? I know we're kind of not mentioning some of the teams that dominated, but we're saving that for next week when the real competition begins.
Yeah, let me shout out Jake Otto at Banning. They put up 56 points in a 56-33 win over Grant. Otto was 20-24, had 307 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. Also chipped in 105 yards on the ground and a touchdown. A couple of receivers to shout out. Diego Corona had 7 catches, 166 yards and a touchdown. Also rushed 7 times for 48 yards and a score. So Banning putting up a pile of points, really tuning up, looking pretty good, kind of blowing out Grant. And then over at San Pedro, we talked about them blowing out Granada Hills. They won 41-0. How about Cam Thomas? 2 receiving touchdowns and a punt return touchdown in that 41-3 win over Granada Hills. So a couple of players, a couple of guys we've talked about before really showing up here in the first round.
And I know that Thomas received his first offer a few weeks ago, so that's deserves a big congrats as well. And San Pedro, I think that Reseda game is going to be the best game in the second round of the D1 playoffs.
I agree.
We'll pick all these games in a little bit. In Division 2, Alex, straight chalk. We saw no upsets, again, kind of as expected. But let's shout out some of the players who had huge games. Santos Rivera, 10 carries for 256 yards, and Roosevelt's 63-36 win over Verdugo Hills. I have a little bit of egg on my face here. I thought
a little bit.
Verdugo Hills might be able to pull off the upset against Roosevelt. No way, and it had a lot to do with Santos Rivera. That rushing attack is deadly.
Yeah, shout out some other guys. Frankie Cruz had 127 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, and Aldo Peral 101 yards and a couple of scores. So yeah, Roosevelt just doing what they do. We talked about a couple of weeks ago how they've only thrown the ball, I think, 3 or 4 times all season long. You knew the rushing attack was coming, and it worked like a charm. 63-36 win over Verdugo Hills.
They now have Wilson, who is a high-powered offense. We'll see how that game goes. That should be exciting. How about DeAnthony Jackson? He caught 3 touchdowns in Wilson, speaking of Wilson, in their 65-14 win over Marshall. The Mules, they're not really getting the respect I think they might deserve because everyone's so fixated on Franklin. It's too bad that the 1 and the 2 seeds in this bracket played each other in the regular season, kind of a preview of what might happen in the championship. But I wanted to shout out Jackson and give Wilson some credit. They're having a great year.
Yeah, well, there's one way to kind of earn that respect, and it's to get to the championship and beat Franklin. That's just about it. That's the only way you're going to kind of turn the conversation towards yourself as the Mules. You shouted out DeAnthony Jackson, the sophomore. How about the sophomore quarterback? Julian Hernandez, 14-28, 250 yards and 3 touchdowns, all 3 going to your boy Jackson. Couple of sophomores doing a great job there for Wilson and a 65-14 win over Marshall. And then let's go talk about the Bell Eagles. I know I give them a ton of love. 45-8 win over Kennedy. Joseph Valladares had 16 carries, 173 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Roberto Castro also scored twice on the ground. So the Bell Eagles, they're getting Canoga Park next week. I said maybe it's an upset. Absolutely fantastic game there for the Eagles, winning 45-8.
And again, we'll pick these ones in a little bit, so remember that. James Ochoa at Arleta, he was the one who was over 300 yards, 325 yards on 35 carries, 4 touchdowns, and Arleta's 38-25 win over University. And I want to give Arleta credit. A lot of the Western League coaches who we talk with regularly said, watch out for University. They won a playoff game last year. I wouldn't be surprised if they went into Arleta and got that win. We thought that Ochoa was going to do a lot of damage, maybe not this much, but he does what he's known for, which is just getting so many yards every game, and they end up beating University. That's a really good win for Arleta. They move on.
Absolutely. And you know what the game plan for Arleta was, like we've talked about, just give that guy the ball. Just give the guy the ball, just doing everything he can, 33 carries. And in the Western League, there are some really good running backs, but Ochoa might be one of the best backs Uni had faced all season long. So fantastic their win for the Mustangs. And then, as you mentioned, Canoga Park 41-0 over View Park, and Torres 20-0 over Chavez. So a couple of shutouts there in Division 2.
Yeah, lastly, Franklin, Alfred Bobadilla threw for 4 touchdowns in Franklin's 41-0, another shutout win over Washington Prep. Locke also had a victory.
Big one.
So those are the teams that are moving on, and like we said with Division 1, we'll focus a lot more on these games and what happened next week, just because now it really starts. We're into the quarterfinal round. It is a very exciting time. In Division 3, Alex, you deserve some credit. You said 9 Lincoln would beat 8 Legacy, and that's exactly what happened, the one upset in Division 3, so I'll pat you on the back. Congratulations.
Yes, thank you. 9-8, usually the most competitive matchup in any of these tournaments. Both these teams pretty evenly matched, and that's kind of what we expected to happen. Lincoln ends up getting the victory, 42-35. And let me shout out Andrew Watkins, the freshman.
Incredible.
3 more years of football for this kid, but what a coming out party. 34 carries, 289 yards on the ground, and 3 scores. He's got 3 more years of football. He's going to be a big player to watch, so big shout out to him and Lincoln getting the victory.
Who will Lincoln play? It's number 1, Santee, and the best running back, in my opinion, in Division 3, Joseph Todd.
Yikes.
They had a big win over Jordan. Todd carried the ball 16 times for 225 yards and 4 touchdowns. Santee's our consensus pick to win, so we foresee that Lincoln game. Maybe it's going to be tough for him, but 2 rushing attacks going head-to-head, that should be a fun one.
Yeah, and you talk about Watkins being the freshman, Todd being the senior. Maybe we're going to see a bit of a torch passing from one guy to the next. D3. Joseph Todd doing everything he can. Also want to shout out Andre Herrera, had 112 yards on the ground and a touchdown. So yeah, Santee, 47-12 victory over Jordan. Kind of our consensus pick to win D3. They just look like the most talented team, but they're going to get a decent Manual Arts team and some of these other teams that are going to give them their best punch, so I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah, and we'll see. Will Santee have to throw the ball? So far they haven't this year, and it's been fine, but just one attempt, and it was an incomplete pass. Maybe that comes back to haunt him. You mentioned Manual Arts. Jaden McElroy of Manual Arts, the quarterback, he threw for a touchdown and ran for 2 more in their 42-7 win over Pauley. We already saw Manual Arts fall to Santee this year, so if they see each other down the line, I think it would be safe to say Santee would win. But Manual Arts, I still think they're a dark horse in this tournament. McElroy's a good quarterback.
Yeah, and as they say, it's hard to beat a team twice. It's even harder to beat them 3 times. Manual Arts and Santee, they've had a bit of a rivalry these last few years, and I think Manual Arts, if they've got a game circled, it's that big Santee game, because let's be honest, if there's a team in D3 that could dethrone Santee, it looks like it might be Manual Arts. They got a great historic program, a pretty solid attack, as you were talking about, Jalen McElroy having a good game. So Manual Arts, the 42-7 win over Pauley. I think that just kind of gives him some new life. I want to shift gears over to the Fremont and Mendez game. Fremont ended up winning that one 36-14 over Mendez, but I got to shout out my boys at Mendez. I was over there last week in East LA talking to them about the program. This is their third season ever, the Mendez Jaguars. They made the playoffs for the first time ever in program history. And these kids, man, they just love the game of football. They love how they prepare. They were really excited. And I got to shout out the senior, Joseph Ponce, probably his last game ever, 122 yards on the ground and a touchdown. The kid finished the year with 1,692 total rush yards, had 3 games of over 200 rushing yards, and had 16 total touchdowns on the season. So, Joseph, I know it didn't end the way you want, but fantastic year for you. And Mendez Jaguars on the rise.
And on the other side of that game, Lee Soto rushed 10 times for Fremont, 142 yards and 2 scores. Wanted to shout him out as well. But to your point about Mendez, it's always nice to see these new teams kind of build a program from guys who started when they were young. They go through it. They're seniors, and to make the playoffs, that's a great story. And I believe you'll have a story coming out on them soon, correct?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Our next building character, LA City building character on the Mendez Jaguars.
Earlier, we discussed Manual Arts. Before, if they want to play Santee, they'll have to go through Gardena, a team from the Marine League who picked up their 3rd win of the year. What I liked about this game, they had 3 different quarterbacks throw touchdowns.
They did.
Quanda Pugh, Nehemiah Seal, and Daquan Paul, and that was in a 40-7 win over Rivera.
Yeah, Andre Lawson had 4 catches, had it 129 yards through the air, a couple of scores. Quanta Pugh, as you mentioned, he threw a touchdown, also carried the rock 7 times, 112 yards, and a touchdown, added that touchdown pass. So Gardena, they play in a really tough league. They get beat up by Narbonne and Carson and Banning, but now they get to beat up on Rivera, get that 40-7 win. Good for them.
Monroe, I know your team, or their team that you really like, Alex. Their quarterback Cam Lord threw 4 touchdowns. Cameron Senegal rushed for 101 yards and 2 touchdowns in their win, 42-15 over Contreras. You like them to get to the championship, don't you?
Yes, I do. They got a twin cam engine over there. The Monroe Vikings, Cam Lord, 12-15, 208 yards, 4 touchdowns, and as you mentioned, Cameron Senegal, the running back, had 2 scores on the ground. Blew out Contreras 42-15. Chatsworth is the number 2 seed, and they shut out North Hollywood. That's not going to be a pushover. But when you got a couple of guys that can really move the football, they're going to score at will. They're going to be a really tough team. And yeah, my bracket, I got Monroe going all the way in.
That is incredible. You mentioned Chatsworth. They also won 42-0 over North Hollywood. They were the one team who we haven't discussed yet, and we'll get to them in our picks in a little bit. All right, let's pick some games. We haven't even mentioned the Open Division yet, and that is a big-time tease because we're going to do that last.
Yes, sir.
Division 3 first, then 2, 1, and then to the Open. So Division 3, 9 Lincoln at 1 Santee. I think we're both going to go with Santee because if you've seen our brackets, we have them as our champion. But hey, maybe that rushing attack in Lincoln gives them some trouble.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of trouble, but put Joseph Todd and the Falcons on his back. They're going to win this one.
So both Alex and I have Santee. Manual Arts at Gardena. We might have a difference of opinion here. What do you think?
Well, I like Manual Arts. As I said, Santee might have some trouble with Man Arts in the semifinals. I'm sticking with it. Even though Gardena's had a really tough schedule, they've been tested more than any other team here in this bracket. I like Manual Arts to win this one.
I have Manual Arts too, but with Gardena and the fact that they play in the Marine League, we've seen in years past they go on deep playoff runs because their schedule is so hard, and then they finally play against competition that is more at their level, and then they win playoff games. It wouldn't surprise me if Gardena won the game, but I'm taking McElroy and Manual Arts to win that one, so we're in agreement once again. Marquez at Fremont, that's a 6-3 matchup.
Yeah, Marquez, I know you're real hot on him. I didn't really like Fremont so much in this bracket. I think Marquez is going to take it.
Wow, so Marquez is my Monroe, if you will. I have them going all the way to the championship. I'm taking Marquez as well. And then Monroe, number 7 at 2, Chatsworth. I think you've kind of tipped this one a little bit. You like Monroe.
Yeah, I think this might be the one time there we differ. I think Monroe, I think they're going to go to all the way to the finals, and I think that's where they lose to Santee. They got a really good running back in Senegal. Cam Lord looks like he's throwing the football really well. I know Chatsworth's got a pretty decent team, but I believe in the twin cam engine over there.
Not so fast. I have Chatsworth. That West Valley League was a gauntlet for them. It prepared them. I think they beat Monroe. I think it will be close, though. In Division 2, Torres at Franklin. And I thought on Twitter on Friday night, going back a week, that this game wouldn't be close. But Torres has 2 guys who are eligible now. They're brothers. Eric Sondheimer has an article on it in the LA Times. So that'll be a boost for Torres, but it's Franklin, right?
Yeah, I don't care. Alfred Bobadilla is going to have a great year. He's only a junior, had a fantastic season, one of the best seasons as a quarterback here in the LA City section. I think they win by a couple scores.
Yep, I have Franklin as well. Now, these next 3 games, I think they could go either way. 5 Lock at 4 Arleta.
Yeah, I had my pen hovering over Locke because of their blowout win over Hollywood, but as we talked about Arleta, we talked about James Ochoa. He had the most impressive stat line for any running back here in the playoffs, so for that reason, I got the Mustangs.
It's Arleta. I agree with you. 6 Bell at 3 Canoga Park. You're going Bell, right? You have to.
Well, I kind of have to. I've talked about Bell so much. They won a 45-8 win over Kennedy. I know Canoga Park, they've got some athletes. You put me under the gun like that, I think I got to take Bell. I'm going to stick with my Eagles.
I'm taking the Hunters of Canoga Park, and in fact, I think they're going all the way to the championship. I have Canoga Park in this one, and maybe I tip a pick for next week. Or not maybe, I did. Give me Canoga Park. Roosevelt, number 7 at 2 Wilson. Can that dynamic rushing attack of Roosevelt beat the high-flying passing attack of Wilson?
Well, they're certainly going to give him a test, but when you're one-dimensional, you're just a little bit easier to game plan for. Maybe not easy to stop, but Wilson, they're a pretty smart team over there. I think it's going to be very, very close, but I got the Mules in this game, and as I tip my pick, I think they're going to go with a rematch to Franklin in the finals.
All right, it's Wilson. I agree with you. One disagreement again from us in D2 as well as D3. In Division 1, 8 Crenshaw at 1 Dorsey. These teams just played a couple weeks ago. Dorsey won. Can they do it again?
They can. I think they're going to go undefeated against Crenshaw this year, even though Crenshaw had a 29-0 victory over Cleveland. They're hot, but I think Dorsey just a little bit better top to bottom. This is going to be a very motivated game. I think everybody's going to come out, going to be a very fun community game. But I got Dorsey in this one by a couple touchdowns.
I agree with you. They just played. I think the same thing is going to kind of unfold, but you never want to underestimate Crenshaw.
No, not against Dorsey. Never.
I know they're down a little bit, but you know that those guys are going to be ready to go. I think this one's going to be close, but Dorsey, they just have a little bit more this year. 5 Banning at 4 Fairfax.
Ooh, Scott Harris and Fairfax, they had a blowout win over Sylmar. Banning put up a ton of points against Grant, but I just think Fairfax, top to bottom as a team, they got a really good running back, they got a really good quarterback. I think if you balance it all out, Fairfax just a little bit better. I think they win by 5 or 6.
Banning's defense scares me a bit. As you said, they gave up a lot of points to Grant. Fairfax is my champion in D1. I'm taking Fairfax. 6 San Pedro at 3 Reseda. Alex, are we going to agree on an upset here?
I think for parity's sake, we're going to have to split up. I think Reseda, I think they win this one. They've had some really, really big-time players, play some really good football. Zeke Savage, the quarterback's done really great. Mario Martinez, fantastic receiver. And there's no edge rusher in this bracket quite like Alonzo Hall. So I think he's going to torment Justin Bernal. I'm going to have to deviate from my bracket here. I got the Regents of Reseda holding on to that 3 seed. I think they advance.
I never deviate. I can't do it. I'm taking San Pedro, and the reason is Justin Bernal. I think he's just so hard to game plan for. We know Reseda has a lot of great athletes, as you mentioned, Alex, but I think he's the difference. When he's healthy and he can throw the ball to Cameron Thomas, I don't care where San Pedro plays. I like their chances, and I think they get the win against Reseda. Remember, the winner of this game will most likely play Southgate and then go on to the championship. Again, don't want to write off Southgate, but
it's different. You were expecting Westchester.
You were expecting Westchester, so that is a big game. I think the best one in Division 1. And then Southgate at Westchester. No real even point to pick it. Westchester's going to have a JV team at Southgate.
Yeah, they're just not going to have their dudes. All their best players aren't going to be able to play. They're not going to have their guys suited up. Nothing you can do. Southgate coming off a huge emotional victory over El Camino Real. You just, for the JV guys' sake, get some experience. Maybe you keep it close, build some confidence, but the Rams should win this one handily.
And finally, the moment everyone's been waiting for. Let's break down those open division games and finish them with a pick. Venice travels to Narbonne. That's the 8-1 game. Narbonne has 4 players suspended. Don't want to say who they are, but they're 4 starters, so that'll hurt them a little bit. But remember, it's Narbonne. It's next man up. They have a million really, really great guys. This has to be the Gauchos, even though that Venice offense is high-flying.
No, I think so. I mean, there's really only a couple of guys at Venice that would start at Narbonne. And when you look at the comparisons there, Narbonne just has a really deep team, and their athletes are just a little bit better top to bottom. So the Gauchos, I don't want to say it's going to be a blowout, but they're going to put up a lot of points. It's going to be up to Diamant, Chad Johnson Jr., Cope, and company to try to keep some points on the board. Try not to get blown out in this one, because Narbonne, they're angry after that Carson game. They want to prove, especially those guys that are filling in for the suspended players, they want to prove that they belong there. So I think Narbonne's taking this one.
Let's get into it. The Battle of the Valley.
It's
at Pierce College, so a neutral site, even though Birmingham is technically the home team. Their home field isn't quite ready yet. So Birmingham 4, San Fernando 5. I think we have similar feelings about this game, Alex, but I'll start with how I feel. I think San Fernando has the better line play, and controlling the trenches in this game is going to be what it's all about. And I think San Fernando has the edge in that regard, so I'm going to pick them. Going to be really close because it's two teams who do different things. Birmingham loves to throw the ball, San Fernando loves to run the ball, and both teams have pretty good defenses. I just think the interior line play for San Fernando, both on offense and defense, will be the difference. Maybe they get to Artiga a couple times. They'll block well for Bryant and Nehemiah Thompson. I have San Fernando in the game. I hate picking against my guy Jason Artiga and Mason White over there at Birmingham. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, let's break it down a little bit. Nehemiah Thompson is probably going to be the best player on the field all night long. If DJ Banks were healthy and he were playing, this would be a different game because you would have a complement to a Thompson. But when you got Nehemiah Thompson and Kyle Bryant playing really, really well, got Adrian Lopez playing nicely as fill-in for a backup quarterback, this team is just playing well, and unit by unit, when you look down the field, I think San Fernando just a little bit better on some sides of the ball than Birmingham is. You talked about Artiga. That's their advantage. If they can throw the football, they can get it over the heads of some of those smaller DBs at San Fernando. They're going to put up points, and they might beat them. But on the whole, the rushing attack, they're going to control the clock. They're not going to turn the ball over. I got the Tigers in this one.
Two things that I think are going to be huge. Jason Artiga can't turn the ball over. He's thrown some picks when he's faced good opposition this year. That's going to be really important. Avoid turnovers. And then on the other side for Birmingham, just that running game. You mentioned Banks. He's not available. He's out for the year. We've seen some guys perform really well when Artiga's handed them the ball off. Can they do that against San Fernando, a team who would have battled Birmingham for the West Valley League title if they played head-to-head in the league? Because for both teams, we've seen guys put up some mammoth stats against teams in their league who just stink. Now they're going up against each other, and they're evenly matched. Can these guys who put up some of these really good stats continue to do it? I have more confidence that San Fernando's guys can than Birmingham's.
Well, here's the thing. Mason White is going to be probably the fastest player on the field anytime he's out there. So if he can get to the edge and he can burn some of those outside linebackers, if he can get past Thompson and Javontrell Turner, he's going to get to the corner and he's going to pick up a ton of yards. But as you mentioned, between the trenches, the beef goes to San Fernando. They just got bigger guys. Their linebackers are a little bit better. The holes are going to be hard to find. So if he can get to the corner, he can burn some of these guys. But if he can't, I just don't think between the lines they're going to move the football a whole lot.
So we both have Narbonne as well as San Fernando, which is technically an upset, that San Fernando game. 6 Garfield at 3 Carson. Carson has 12 players suspended, and a lot of these guys are impact guys. Can they overcome it?
You can't play a football game with only 25 or 30 guys. You guys get tired. It's going to be a very tough time for Garfield. If they want to road out, here it is. You can beat Carson, who's shorthanded, and then you might get Eagle Rock next. This is a chance for the Bulldogs to make that state playoff game and to have a huge, huge turn of events here for the program. So I think Garfield wins against Carson. Real shame, man, because if Carson were at full strength, we would have a lot more to think about. But because Carson is just shorthanded, losing 16 guys, I don't think they can beat a team that's comparable in skill with a bunch of good players when they've lost almost half their team.
I agree. I'm just not sure. Carson's going to be pissed off. They're going to be angry.
That's
it's
true.
At home. I predict them to start pretty well, and then you mentioned the reserves, the guys are going to be tired.
Depth is going to be an issue.
Yeah, will they be able to finish strong? And that's the question in this game. Garfield, they haven't played anyone like Carson all year.
Not even close.
The Southern Section teams that they played were not very good. Their league was really bad. We talked about it. Eagle Rock has kind of a weak schedule as well, but their schedule is definitely harder than Garfield's. So is Garfield for real? We're going to find out really quick against Carson. I think this 10-0 season for them is legitimate, so I'm going to take Garfield because of those Carson suspensions. But I'll say this. If both teams were at full strength, the game at Carson, I would have taken Carson because I don't think that Garfield has seen a team quite like them this year. The suspensions are what kills them, and you hate to see that.
Yeah, you really do, because it's not an even matchup. It's not the best team that one guy has and the same best team on the other side. If Carson, and I think this is the key, if Carson can bottle up P.J. Garcia, if they can slow them down and make Garfield throw the football, you're going to get them into trouble. That's just asking a little bit more. That's having them deviate from their game plan. And of course, Carson, that's what's going to be their main goal. They're going to try to slow down that rushing attack there from Garfield. So if they can do that, there's going to be a chance. You put up some early touchdowns. Who knows? Maybe Garfield starts to feel it a little bit. They feel like, hey, maybe we can't beat this team. You kind of win that head game. So for Carson, it's going to be imperative. Score early. Kind of help bide yourself some time when those reserves and that issue starts to crop up a little bit. So for Garfield, if you can run the football, run it past Carson, you're going to be okay. Carson can slow him down. Watch out.
Remember, Carson was trailing Narbonne at halftime 7-0.
Yeah, they hung with him.
And Narbonne was at full strength in that game. Again, it was at Carson, but they hung with him. I think Garfield wins. It's a slight margin, 21-17, and maybe they get a touchdown right at the end to try to kind of seal it. I really think this game's going to be close despite these suspensions. but it has to be Garfield because of the guys who are missing for Carson. I don't think logically it makes sense to pick them because of their losses.
Yeah, I just don't think you can beat a team when you're not at full strength. When they're this comparable, I just don't think you can.
I agree. Last game, 7 Palisades at 2 Eagle Rock. We've gone back and forth with this game all week, but I think we're in general consensus that it's Eagle Rock, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Palisades hasn't faced a team that's going to have the team speed of Eagle Rock. I mean, the best team that Palisades faced, you could argue, was either Brentwood or Venice. Both those games real close. Pally kind of split both of those. So, I mean, it's going to be just a kind of a difficult game here for Palisades to move the ball in kind of contrast with Eagle Rock. They're just not going to have the same team speed. They're not going to be able to move the ball as well or as easily. But here's the key. Pally's got a really good defense, a really fast defense, a really smart defense that doesn't commit a lot of penalties. They tackle really, really well. They can cover the deep ball. Pally is going to give Nathan Corrales some trouble. If he's going to be able to get past them and run by him, they're going to win this game. But if they're able to bottle him up, maybe come up with a couple of interceptions, this game could turn real, real quickly.
Palisades will come in. I think this one's going to be close, but I think Eagle Rock 28-24. I just think overall they're a little bit better, and maybe not the 2 seed, but the fact that they are number 2 certainly helps them the games at home.
Yeah, I spoke with Jake Nadley, one of the senior captains at the Pally volleyball game. He's like, make sure you pick against us. He wants the good omen.
Yeah, well, we did.
Yeah, I think we did. So Eagle Rock, even if he didn't ask me to pick them, and all in jest, all jokes aside, I think Eagle Rock, top to bottom, I think they're just a little bit faster. They've played some really good football. They might be the second best team, truly the second best team here in the city, and they got a chance to prove it.